Well, more American workers are getting high, according to a new report from drug screening company Quest Diagnostics. American workers testing positive for marijuana use reached the highest percentage since 2004. That's right, the percent of workers getting high just hit a 14-year high. That might not be surprising, though, with more states warming to legalizing marijuana and more retailers now offering cannabis products, including CBD lotions and creams. Just today, Rite Aid announced it would be following CVS and Walgreens in offering those CBD products, putting it on its shelves in 2 states. But the U.S. isn't the only market where cannabis use is rising. There are plenty of markets around the world changing the way they look at cannabis. For more on that and the opportunities to invest in the green wave is Kyle Detweiler, CEO of Northern Swan Holdings, a cannabis-focused investment fund that just raised another $58 million in Series D funding. Kyle, I want to start with a question in terms of what we're seeing in investing trends, right? A lot of Canadian companies had a head start in terms of raising money, and now American companies focused on cannabis are kind of catching up and seeing valuations catch up to those in Canada as well. So is that something that you look at and see where in these other countries are the best opportunities to invest in cannabis?
Yeah, sure. I think you're exactly right. You know, the Americans are catching up both in terms of the amount of capital they can raise and the valuations. You know, I was trained at KKR and Blackstone, and so our investment fund really focuses at kind of the next thing. So we're mainly focused in Latin America and Europe, where we've become one of the largest producers south of the border.
In terms of investing in the companies that are based over there, or are there companies based here that also have operations there? Because I think a lot of people are confused in terms of how these markets operate with one another. If there's Canadian companies growing cannabis in Canada and selling to the States, I mean, how does it all kind of work?
Yeah, sure. I don't think there are any Canadians yet selling in the United States just because of the legality of that. But you know, our strategy was to invest in Latin America. You know, we looked at all the different countries and actually picked Colombia, of all places, where there was a federally legal structure to grow. And so our business plan is to eventually sell to the Canadians, eventually sell to the Europeans. You know, never say never. I mean, if things change in the United States, I suppose we can think about that, but we don't have plans today. So that's really been our strategy.
A lot's been made about CBD products and how that growth in that specific segment of the cannabis space is larger in terms of growth opportunities to some people than the medicinal marijuana side. And as we're seeing retailers kind of approach CBD, get comfortable with selling CBD products, how does that kind of play in the overall cannabis investment space?
Yeah, I think it's hard to ignore. You know, CBD has been recognized by a number of institutions globally, including the World Health Organization, for having you know, some positive health effects. You know, there is now an FDA-approved drug, which is largely pure CBD. So I think it's great. You know, I think personally, as a big advocate of prohibition and ending the war on drugs, I think CBD is just, you know, one more step towards that process and could very well be the underpinnings for a full legalization in the United States.
Kyle, I'm wondering, as we mentioned earlier, you know, CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens now selling these CBD products. I'm wondering what you see as the next big mainstream push here in the United States. I know you guys are focusing on Latin America and Europe, but when it comes to this mainstream of marijuana and cannabis, where do you see the next big thing? Is it in food? Is it in clothing? I know a lot of people are talking about using hemp clothing. Wow.
Yeah, you know, I think, I personally believe that it's probably not going to be in a food, just because I don't think the FDA is really going that direction. I think they want to restrict ingestibles. So I think cosmetics is probably the next place you're going to see, you know, CBD really explode. So face creams, you know, there are a lot of anti-inflammatory properties that are associated with CBD. We need more research, but I think that's the next big push.
And internationally, you know, as we said, Latin America and Europe have been, you know, big areas of investment for you. But looking even beyond that, because you guys, as you mentioned, are forward-looking, what do you see internationally as the next big market?
Yeah, so we're really focused on Southern Europe right now. We think that's going to be an interesting place both to produce and to sell. Europe will be a bit like the United States, where each country is going to approach it differently. You know, in some countries they don't like botanical-based CBD; they only want synthetic. In other countries, it's the exact opposite.
Yeah.
You know, in France or say in Germany, you know, they don't like sweet kind of cough drop taste, but in the UK they really like that.
Very
so same
taste.
brand can't even coexist sometimes. We're also looking to set up one of our first operations in Asia soon. Can't really tell you where yet, but I think that market, you know, has been familiar with the cannabis plant for thousands of years, and I also think, you know, the CBD opportunity could be quite large in Asia as well.
All right, let's talk about valuations and how some of these names that people might know kind of shape up in terms of stacking up? Whether some are good, some are bad, some are too hot. I mean, what are you seeing in terms of the investing trends in the cannabis space? And what are some of those names that you do think are positioned well? I know Canopy Growth and Tilray are looking at expanding in those markets as well, especially as Europe warms to CBD, just like we're seeing here in the States.
Yeah, I guess I'll probably just have to dodge that one. I'm not sure if I'd have any specific recommendations because we mostly invest in private companies, and we ourselves are planning to go public later this year. So
it feels like a lot of the work is in the private sector right now, where the big advancements and the big push with the money is coming. Not so much publicly traded opportunities, legal reasons there mostly, right?
I think so. I think there are a number of public opportunities. Our investment thesis is not to invest in the United States right now. So, that's an opportunity, for example, we're leaving up. But, there are only a handful of Latin American publicly traded companies. We'll be the first one ideally to list on the NASDAQ, which just reaches a different investor universe than some of the Canadian exchanges. There are a handful of publicly traded companies coming from Europe. So I think we're really just in the early innings of this, and there'll be a lot more opportunities for those companies to list.
All right, Kyle Detweiler, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate it. Northern Swan Holding.